This is Supply Chain Breakdown, and today we'll be breaking down why we believe corporate data science has failed. Another uncontroversial take here on Lokad. My name's Conor, I'm Communications Director here at Lokad, and to my left, as always, Lokad founder Joannes Vermorel. Now, before we get into the discussion, comment down below, do you immediately disagree with our take? Has corporate data science overall failed? Well, we'll find out over the course of the discussion. Get your questions and comments in. Alexei is running the live chat today. Say hello, Alexei. And with that, Joannes, let's get straight into it. So, top of the bill, data science has failed. This is a provocative statement. It's a very on-brand statement, but is it an exaggeration of a statement?
Again, from my own viewpoint, it is not. I have had the chance to discuss with over, let's say, I think 200 companies about what they are doing, supply chain-wise, data-wise, and so far, I would say that the quasi-totality of them have not a single resounding success with data science. So what just more specifically, I'm talking about non-tech companies.
Okay,
so I'm putting aside, the big tech. So I'm not talking about
Google,
Microsoft, Amazon, etc.
Okay,
So non-tech companies operating sizable supply chains. And I'm talking, when I say the data science have failed, I mean the corporate team that operate under the name of the data science team. Has this team delivered something that generally contributes to the profitability of the company? And a litmus test for that is if those companies were to liquidate, this team overnight, would their profitability be substantially harmed? At the extreme, would they even go bankrupt? If data science, that would be my take, was really delivering some kind of significant value, then normally if you just remove the team, it should deeply harm the company. And my take is that for literally all the companies I've seen, we could remove the data science team. That would be barely an inconvenience.
Okay, but again, so define as you see the problem. How do you see data science division? Like, what do you see as the mandate, the remit of that you think they are failing at?
So that's the problem. Data science is a mean, not an end. So if we take an analogy, let's go back, end of the 19th century, this great new thing, which is electricity. And electricity is fantastic. You can do so many things with electricity. It is absolutely incredible. That's going to be an invention that will define the next century. Yes. Now imagine, what about a company that creates an electricity department? No. I mean, you can see that if you were to introduce an electricity department, it's wrong. Why? Because it's not that electricity is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the electricity department is bad. And that's my point with data science. I'm not saying that data science as a subfield of computer science has failed. There are incredible things that are being done with model techniques, perspective to deal with data. This is not failing. This is a rocket ship, and it's just Gen AI is just the latest iteration of this rocket ship. However, what I'm saying is that if you introduce a data science division, you end up with the very same sort of nonsense that you would get if you were to introduce an electricity division in your company. The reality is that, again, this is a mean, not an end. You don't want electricity for the sake of electricity. You want what you can do with it, and it's going to be something that is extremely diffuse. It's going to have a completely different meaning for finance, factories. Maybe, again, with factory, the people would say electricity is great. We can have engines moving heavy things. Great. Finance would say, but maybe if we have a very fancy, a computing machine that's IBM, then maybe we can have something that do arithmetic for us. You see, it's electricity again, but it's a completely different thing. And same thing with data science. So my point is that corporate data science has failed because if you isolate data science in its own division, you end up with something that, again, and I have seen hundreds of companies that never really managed to deliver something really impacting because they never really managed to get the mandate to do that. And why? It's because they are not inside the division that is already having like a mission. They are not inside finance, they are not inside marketing. And the case where it works is when people operate within an existing department with a clear mandate.
Yeah. Well, that's again that. So there's just two ways to frame this question. One is the negative and the positive. We'll start with what you think is wrong specifically. So, how do you currently see data science teams being deployed, and why is that wrong?
So the archetype
exactly.
is the top management have seen in the press that data science was a thing. Apparently, it gets a lot of people very excited.
Get me some AI.
And so yeah, exactly. That's the vibe where the board they just get together and say, okay, we can't fear of missing out, FOMO. We need this thing. We need this thing. So okay, let's hire a bunch of kids to do that. And so lo and behold, they hire half a dozen of very smart people, I would say technically inclined. And those people will end up saying, oh, look at all those shiny things. They are like open source projects. What are the name of those open source projects? That can be anything, pandas, PyTorch, scikit, I mean, you name it. And you have all those, shiny toys. Let's bring those open source projects that are arguably of incredibly high quality. That is true. That brings an incredible level of sophistication to the table. Also true. And that have been instrumental in letting big tech achieve resounding successes. Also true. So people say, oh, we have all the ingredients. We have those incredible open source projects. We have those smart people, and we are just going to emulate. But it does, and then the consequence is it doesn't work out. People just build stuff. The typical pattern is that there will be extremely fancy, promising prototype, and in just a couple of weeks, 3 weeks down the road, bam, very fancy prototype, impressive. And then a year later, it will still not be in production. And 5 years down the road, there is still nothing really production grade out of this department. And certainly nothing that would be game changing. Yes, here and left, I would say left and right, you will have like minor things being data driven, but that's like, again, in French you would say cinquième rue de la charrue. It's like the fifth wheel of the car. It's just something that is really not critically important.
Okay. Well, again, you've mentioned production, and I do want to get back to the idea of pilot purgatory, but you've also mentioned the words purpose a lot, goal, direction, function. These are all words, because I know we're both fans of Aristotle, that sort of gets into the idea of like teleology. What's the telos? So again, we discussed what is going wrong. What do you actually see as the goal of a data science team? Like, why does it exist if it exists at all?
That's the problem. It exists for the same purpose that an electricity division exists in your company. That again, you see that's interesting because when you frame it like this is like an electricity division, you can see the problem. It sounds off because it's a mean, it's not an end. I mean, obviously, if you are, and even if you are an electricity provider yourself, you're going to subdivide this problem into plenty of sub-problems. Even if you are EDF, a national electricity provider in France, they don't have like an electricity division. The entire business is electricity. So you see, the thing is that you really need to think of what is it that you want to achieve. And for example, if marketing is looking at that and they say, what we want is to optimize our spending for Google ads, no problem. Then they will say, we do Google ad spending optimization. And they don't do data science. They just do this optimization. And it turned out that there is a lot of data involved. But you see, as soon as you embrace an operational perspective where you want to do something, it ceases to be called data science. And that's why I say corporate data science has failed. It's because anytime I can see a team that is still called data science, it is a reflection that those people are lost, they have no purpose, and usually there is nothing in production of any significance. Yes, they will have a few widgets right and left, but it's especially if they have been around for a decade. But again, if we look at companies that are not big tech, those teams, I've never seen any of those teams. I would say holding in their hands the fate of the company. It is at best it was something extremely secondary.
Thing is, you've also, aside from your experience here with Lokad, you've also worked as you've audited tech companies. You've been around smaller companies. So not FANG. We're not talking about Google. We're not talking about Amazon. You've been around small startups, and you've been around, I presume, successful data science teams. So what's the differentiation there between ones that were good and corporate data science failing overall?
I've been auditing over 100 startups, but it's completely different when I audit, for example, a company that do fraud detection.
Yeah.
So yes, obviously,
that's the goal.
That's the goal. They are literally detecting frauds, and then they are going to, for example, segment a type of frauds, and they will have a team that is dealing with pig butchering scams. And that's something that exists. And yes, and they will have a specific heuristic, specific algorithm to detect that, and how to address them, and how to report the things effectively to the police or the relevant authorities, etc., etc. So the point that I'm making is that data science in those sort of tech companies work because it's literally their raison d'être. It's their whole purpose, because they start with a problem that they want to solve. Let's say it's fraud detection. It can be also anomaly detection for mechanical engineering. It can be plenty of things. And then in order to address this problem, then at some point you have to invoke sophisticated tools. But you see, they do not start by saying, look, we have this nifty open source package, we should be using it. They start with, we have this big unaddressed or poorly addressed problem that exists in the industry, in this vertical. We want to solve this problem, and we see that all the simple solution fails. And after validating that things that are simple fail, then we have to bring the big guns in order to finally crack it. But you see, it's a very, very different journey. It comes from, I would say, having like a very precise understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve, and ultimately deciding what are the sort of technologies that you need to solve that. And by the way, in those companies that I've audited, more often than not, they end up in the same sort of journey than big tech, which is they realize that the problem has not been solved because everything that is available on the market is inadequate. So all the open source is there. It's fantastic, but it's inadequate. That's the reason why the problem is not solved in the first place. And thus, they end up rolling out their own technological solution, and as a byproduct of this journey, they end up outsourcing components that happen to be subsegments of the solution that just produced. Exactly like those big tech companies are doing when they tackle ground problems, and then they decide to outsource parts of their solution, just like, for example, I don't know, Airflow from Facebook. That's a large-scale distributed task scheduling system with dependencies. They developed that internally, and at some point, it was just a piece of a bigger solution, and they just outsourced that. And that is typically the journey for those pieces of technology. And what is wrong is to think that you can just grab those pieces and just reuse them for your own purpose in a large company, even if your journey is completely different. My message is that those technological pieces are typically excellent, but they come from a very specific journey, and most of the time they are not going to be appropriate for a large corporation that has problems that are completely different in terms of again, nature and everything compared to, let's say, big tech, like a company like Meta. You know, it's just the vast majority of companies on Earth have like nothing to do with the sort of problems faced by Meta.
Well, again, anyone who's listened to any of Lokad's content for, I think, any amount of time is familiar with the perspective that a lot of the time you would, I think it's safe to say, you would disagree with how a lot of budget is spent in corporations. Okay. Is there something uniquely pernicious or uniquely devastating, or are there uniquely negative consequences to the way money is spent in data science, or how much money is spent on data science beyond just, well, money is wasted?
No, again, lack of consequence. So money, you see, it's the thing is that due to the fact that the data science team is, again, stereotype, extremely isolated, there is almost no second order consequences. Again, they don't pollute the rest of the company. They don't create second order problems just because, again, they are very isolated, and so the damage is, to a large extent, restricted to the money that is being wasted on this team. And they are so isolated that they don't even consume much bandwidth for the top management. So it's a very contained problem.
What do you mean? That they're so isolated? What do you mean there?
I mean that you could imagine that, for example, if you have other phenomenon, let's say some sort of virtue signaling trend or whatever, that then keeps everybody busy and, you know, is like a tax for the mental bandwidth of all the executing team, that is very, very detrimental, because that's literally consuming the mental bandwidth of all your entire management team. Data science is not like that. It's typically super isolated, and it's not going to be, you know, cognitive load for the top of them, for the top management. It's just something that everybody ignores, maybe except for one or two meetings once a year. So I think the problem, that's the good news, is that it's just limited in a wasteful spending, but it doesn't really goes beyond that. For me, it is a long tradition. We have seen that, and it will repeat. The buzzwords are changing. When I started to get interested into those data analysis techniques, you know, sophisticated data stuff, 25 years ago, the keyword was data mining. Companies were creating, you know, data mining teams. There has been also a brand with digitalization teams, innovation teams, now data science teams, and nowadays it's still a little bit recent, but I'm pretty sure we will see soon generative AI teams. Again, the problem is that if you have a corporate team that is named after a mean, like electricity, instead of an end, like fraud detection, this is wrong. You should not have a team that is named after something that is a mean to an end. It should be after the end, because you would say, oh, the naming is not so important. I would say, yes, it is important, because it will really define how people approach the jobs, the sort of people that you will hire, the sort of ways that people will look at that job and create their own roadmap. You know, if you have a data science team, they will come up with, a data science roadmap. If you say you are the fraud detection team, then the roadmap will be, okay, how do we eliminate those frauds? And that will become, you know, that suddenly it's a big twist. And by the way, Lokad, we actually stopped a decade ago to hire data scientists. We are now hiring supply chain scientists. It may sound a small twist, but the twist is, at the hiring stage, we are literally telling to our candidates, if you join us, your mission will be to get the supply chain of our client to run as smoothly as humanly possible. I mean, we will try to give you the very best tool, the very best training than we can have. So you're not going to be on your own. We are going to support you as much as we can with the very best technologies, the very best methodology, the seniors that will coach you and mentor you. But ultimately, if you join us, you are in a team where the goal is to get those supply chain run as adequately as possible. And if to do that, it turned out that we only need basic arithmetic, that just a few heuristics suffice. Great. You know, we are not there to publish a paper about fancy algorithms. If you can do that with an incredibly simple heuristic, I would say, good job. You've just made our life so much easier for maintenance. In contrast, when we were hiring data scientists, people would object to us, say, oh no, we can't, I can't have this problem solved by this thing that is like super dumb. This is not state of the art. I mean, I need for my data science resume to be using deep learning. I need to use deep learning. Well, and for us, we say, no, you don't need to use deep learning. If you can actually solve this problem with something that is vastly simpler than deep learning, then you don't need deep learning.
Well, before I push on, I will just say we are hiring supply chain scientists. So
yes,
if you're interested, feel free to send your CV to us or to ideally our recruitment manager. But pushing on, I do want to at least represent the other side a little bit here. So you've made the claim earlier. You made the claim earlier about very little getting into production grade. And to be fair, to add a little bit of context to that, I do have. We can argue about the validity of the sources, but some sources from Gartner reporting only 48% of digital initiatives meet or exceed business outcome targets, and multiple surveys show AI and machine learning projects stall pre-production. Now, you can say 52% get into production, but whatever. The whole point is there's clearly what most people and consultants would call a pilot purgatory. Now, I am not making the claim that that is a univariate problem. I'm not saying it's only data science, but in that multivariate problem, what weighting do you give to data science divisions in that unpleasant phenomenon?
Oh, it's overwhelming. I mean, usually when again,
I wasn't expecting you to say
when you go for a digital initiative that is to digitalize, to put a system of record in place to keep track of something. Let's say, for example, expenses are managed through Excel spreadsheets and emails. Okay, this is just a big mess. And at some point they say, okay, we are going to have a project and we are going to have like an expense management system. And then lo and behold, they proceed. And 6 months down the road, they have the app is set up and the practice is in place. And guess what? It works because it's not, again, this is a system of records. This is just about being able to put the receipt for your taxi online in some app and be properly reimbursed afterward. So if we're talking of this sort of initiatives, yes, success are overwhelming. You know, it's very rare, especially when you take a small workflow that you will face a success. I mean, sometimes you do because some enterprise vendor are just exceedingly bad, but normally that should be a quasi zero risk sort of initiative. And on the contrary, things that are much more in the camp of what I call system of intelligence, that's where the quasi totality of fails. And I would say if it originates from a data science team, my own experience is that it fails all the time. It fails all the time. At Lokad, we even have situations where we even had clients where it was strange because literally for years we had side by side Lokad, which was generating supply chain decision, and the internal data science that had been there doing that for like half a decade before us, and they're still there and they still generate things that are not used, that are just ignored, and due to sometimes corporate complacency, they just keep being there. So it can be strange at times, but again, my take is that it's data. What data science is extremely useful, just like electricity. It's a tool, and it's an incredibly versatile tool because it's a tool that is going to be useful wherever there are data, and nowadays that means everywhere. So is it worthy of interest? Absolutely, but the message is, it do not warrant its own team. It's something that needs to be in every single team where there is data floating around. All the teams, so that's going to be marketing, that's going to be finance, that's going to be production, that's going to be purchasing, that's going to be planning, etc., etc., etc.
Well, actually, because again, I want to be somewhat constructive here because I've seen some comments about, okay, well, what should we do? And actually, my next question is, based on what you just said, are you suggesting that let's say marketing and sales and finance, that each member of that team should upskill in data science, or there should be essentially a data science member in each team, or there's a data science department and then they loan out on a ticket basis members to help out those respective departments? Like what is the world that you're advising here?
So what I'm saying is that for every like function in the company, there is a potential in leveraging the data to just accomplish what this function is doing, but better, faster, in a way that is more productive. If we take a simple example, simpler than, let's say, supply chain, that would be marketing and spent on Google Ads. Google Ads are very complex. You can bid varying fees for thousands of keywords. You have to track the performance, the cost per click, the cost per outcome. It is fairly technical. Now you have many routes to that. You can say, we are going to build this competency in-house and have true experts, and we are going to develop our competency to be able to crush the data, be very efficient at this optimization game in-house, etc. Or you can go from the other spectrum, which is we are going to outsource that completely to an agency that will be running the optimization for us. Again, both approaches are valid as long as there is, I would say, genuine competency at play somewhere, either internally or externally. Both approaches are fine, but clearly you need to have people either in-house or outside the house that have a true affinity to, let's say, all the everything that would fall under the umbrella on data science. So yes, you can't bypass a deep data science understanding, but it's going to be seen through the lenses of the function that you're trying to optimize.
Well, I'm going to actually pitch you. This is a question that had come in through private message to me on this topic, and it's very much phrased, I'll read it verbatim. Devil's advocate to Joannes, isn't failure too harsh if analytics still inform meetings and reports? In other words, if leadership feels better informed, doesn't that add value? Question mark.
That would be a sort of case where I was telling that data science is usually isolated and don't have like negative consequences. I would say that is exactly the sort of thing. So I would say, well, here it's even worse. You have like negative consequences. You're now distracting executives with feel-good reports. It's not good. You here first. What you're describing, if what you want is to bring descriptive statistics to top management, this is the role of BI. You already have like a business intelligence team. You don't need to have like to double the budget that is already too high of business intelligence for data science. By the way, another sort of division with problems, business intelligence teams. That's also another sort of problem. And again, my take is that, again, marketing should carry the responsibility of crafting their own indicators. They should not be outsourcing that to data science. So you see, here the problem is that you have built an entity. If the only outcome, when I was telling you that the sort of, again, the litmus test, will the company be severely harmed? That's my criteria for success. I would say measurably harmed, not necessarily severely, but let's say measurably harmed.
Financially.
If the data science team is gone. And here you're telling me, oh, is it too harsh if we have like metrics and the management feel good about it? I say, I mean, it's nice that you're improving the morale of management. Good for you, but I'm more concerned with the P&L. How many dollars are we bringing into extra dollars do we bring to this company? That should be the hard hard criteria. And that's what I'm saying is that it is very easy to produce walls of metrics. At Lokad, that's our perspective. Producing thousands of numbers a day is super easy. Millions even. It's cheap. It's entertaining. And but producing 10 numbers a day that are worth being read is extremely difficult. And that's the catch, is that are you producing those 10 numbers a day that are worth being read? And my experience, again, when I was saying this data science teams is no, they do not. They will produce walls of metrics, yes, but not the things that are extremely sharp and that would, if removed, damage the company.
Well, again, a lot of those metrics though come from above. Again, marketing is an organ of a department of a company. Sales is an organ.
Yes.
And again, it's again, it sounds like you're saying some are more vestigial than others. But again, they're not responsible for the indicators that are thrust on
Yeah,
them.
and again, if you have already another class of division that is called business intelligence, that is in charge of producing descriptive statistics. So again, for me, that's very the best case would say, if you're telling me that is data science for you, it's just redundant with business intelligence. Just merge it back into business intelligence. You don't need to have this separate division.
Right. Well, there are a few questions to get to from the chat, but there's just one more that's come through, and I will read verbatim again privately. Tell Joannes I can't just fire my data science team. So how can I improve things on day one? But again, it's a fair question. Again, blue sky thinking, we can't. Like France would be very difficult, for example. So okay, I understand the theory, but realistically, what can be done?
What I have done, I've done that for some fairly large e-commerce. What I've suggested is to split this team and redispatch these teams under other divisions. So if you have like a team with half a dozen people, you take 2 of those people, you put them in finance, 2 of them under marketing, and 2 of them under, let's say, planning. And that's it. So you see, and then you say to those managers, you are now in charge of those people who are competent, and you will be now directly in charge of making sure that what they do with their time is really useful and productive for the company. So I know if you tell me that you are in charge of this unit, I'm sorry for this disappointing answer, but my answer to you is, if you really want to be a hero for your company, you need to convince your upper management to split and disperse this competency across various divisions. And the very best thing that you could do, but the problem is that it only works for very large companies. I've seen that for very large companies, is to say that instead of having a data science team that is supposed to be doing data science for the department, you just stop doing that and you say, now we are going to become coach and mentors for data science, but inside each department. So forget about delivering a working prototype for marketing. Now there is like 5 of us, and we are going to be coaching marketing so that they can do interesting things with the data. We are going to be coaching sales so that they can do interesting things with the data, etc. But that only works in companies that are probably like 5 billion euros and above. Large companies that can support having a team that is just there to evangelize something. So if you take it from this perspective, I think it could work. It would also be transient. So it's not something that is going to be there forever. But the idea that in a large company, you could say, for the next 2 years, we are going to have a task force that will evangelize something for the rest of the company, is, for me, it's okay, as long as it comes with an expiration date. So it's we do that for whatever, 12, 18, 24 months, no more than 2 years. And then after that, we are done. We move on. It's the team is dissolved and something else happened. It's difficult, but I doing it in any other way is just going to end up in some kind of semi-hidden bureaucracy that is just wasting the money of the company, and that's it.
All right. Well, I'm going to push on because there are some questions for you. So I'm going to read this verbatim. This is from Neil Knight. Hey, Neil. Do you think that data science are ignored because they're internal to the organization, or because they're not useful? There's more. I find that consultants are often listened to because they can come to the same conclusions management does. Parentheses. Think of McKinsey, Bain, Accenture, etc. Your thoughts?
No, I don't. I mean, yes. Again, French proverb that nul n'est prophète en son pays, so nobody is a prophet in your own country. But so yes, being an outsider is helping, but that's just a minor thing. To the credit of consultant, it's not just because they are outsiders that it's again. My experience is that consultant may have tons of flaws, but one thing that they get right is to go hard on problems, on genuine important problems. That we can disagree on whether they have, the technical skills for the resolution and whatnot, but usually when it comes to zooming into something that matters dearly to the top management, they are good. And that's the thing is that, and usually, and that's the things that data science is not doing. The problem is that because they are isolated, they cannot tackle the problems that would really comes with big payback. Because those problems requires big transformation. And I've seen that so many times with data science. And there is a company and say, but why are you tackling this pet project that is so inconsequential? And we just do a back of the envelope and we agree after 20 minutes that there is a problem that is at least 20 times bigger in terms of payback that is just next to the one they are tackling. They say, yeah, but this problem, it's much bigger, but it's kind of touchy. We need to ruffle some feathers. We will need to have approval from various layers inside the company. I say, and that's where the consultant tend to win. Consultants, if they're good, McKinsey, Bain, BCG style, they would say, I think usually their ethics is to we are going to focus on what matters and not go for like completely pet projects just because we are a little bit afraid of ruffling a few feathers. You see, that to the credit of good consulting groups, they are capable of doing that, and that's why they tend to be much more effective. Is that even if what they do is very crude, at the very least they focus on things that are very real. And my take is that what I see in data science is that because they are not part of a hierarchical structure, they are on the side. They are not part of marketing. They are not part of finance. They are not part of whatever. That means that they never manage to get the authority to have the company transform itself so that it will leverage whatever you want to do with the data. For example, fraud detection, let's say fraud detection. That means that when you detect a fraud, you need to be able to say, we are not going to serve this customer. We treat that as a fraud. So we reject the payment outright. And yes, there will be false positives. So there will be genuine, honest customers that will be harmed by the fraud detection system because they are just going to notice that their order has been canceled for seemingly no reason whatsoever. Yes. Now, the question is that how many false positive and how many true positive? That's a balance. And obviously, there will be an arbitrage here, but that's going to be a tough question. And if you say to the data science team, as long as there is even one true positive per year, we can't have this in production, it's never going to go in production. So you see, at some point, this is a trade-off, and you will need to have authority to say, yes, it's very good overall, even if we see that there is like a negative that is under control, which is those false positive where we have honest customers that are flagged as, fraud, while it is not the case. Obviously, the goal then becomes of refining the methods even better, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, Neil, you are correct. Neil just commented that, thank you for that. I really sent you off on a long answer. But again, I hope it was very, very helpful. I'll push on now to Amrinder. What is your view on the role of the product manager or product scientist? Is this the better means to deliver the end value that you're talking about?
So product managers, I think it's, again, it's very much the sort of things that exist in the realm of system of records. You see, product management is critical for system of records because the challenge when you do a system of records is that you have the sky is the limit in terms of features. You have so many features. You need to choose. You need to have, because again, let's say we are talking of anything, expense management. You have some kind of app for that. There is so many features that you can put into this app that it can become a monster. So you need to, and that's the role of the product management, is to create a roadmap, to decide how you're going to approach the features, sort them out, do some triage, and say, no, we are not going to do that. Yes, you have people who are loudly complaining about that, etc. So for me, product manager is something very useful, but we are in the realm of systems of records. Yeah. System of intelligence, to get a vibe, we are talking of unattended decision-making processes. So we are talking of, let's say, anti-spam discussion. think of it, the archetype of a system of intelligence is anti-spam detection. You have false positive, false false positive, false negative. That is what you're trying to improve. You cannot improve that by just discussing with users. It's not, there is no list of features that you have to prove. Another system of intelligence, again, outside supply chain, would be search engine. How do you improve the search result page written by Google? It's a very difficult problem where it's not about arbitraging features. So my take is that product management is very important, but for me, it belongs to another realm, which is the realm of system of records. Data science, if we say data science in the sense that we are discussing here, something that is very impacting, it has to be about decisions. Thus, it has to be in the realm of system of intelligence. Yes. And that's why I think that, product management or management scientists, they have a role to play, but it's very minor, and it's something, again, that is very much from the realm of systems of records.
Well, I will add just a bit of foreshadowing for next week that we will dedicate a lot more time next week's episode to systems of record, systems of reports, and systems of intelligence. So watch out for when we promote that, and do attend. I'm going to call a close to the questions. So again, if there are any more questions people want to ask, put them in the comments below, and we'll respond to them. But Joannes, again, we've been talking for about 42 minutes. You've covered a lot. Thank you. A closing thought, a call to action for people who, okay, again, agree with you, but what is my day one step? What do I do now to affect change?
So fundamentally, my message would be there is a lot that you can do with your data. The vast majority of businesses today are underusing their data vastly. So this intuition of data science, I think it comes from a good place, which is you have so much data that is just not leveraged to make the business better in many, many ways. At Lokad, obviously, it's predictive optimization of supply chain. That's what we do. But there are so many other things. So I think it comes from a good place. What also comes from a good place is this mechanical sympathy. You need to have people who really embrace the technicality of it, so that it's not just it's just not educated guesses. It's people who have like some real affinity with the challenge. That is good. That is good. All of that is good. What is not good is to take that and say, I need to create a division. That is just wrong. That is an anti-pattern. That is a little bit a lazy way to approach the problem. What you need is to make sure, just think of the electricity division, just think like electricity end of 19th century, what you need. So it comes from a good place. Electricity is going to be super important, no question. It's going to be super important for all your division. Same for data science. And my take is that it should be you should be, as a leader inside the company, challenging every single division to make the most of the data that exists in the company for their function. And every single division leader needs to be responsible for on his own agenda, to be responsible for making the most for his or her function. And this will requires indeed some data science, stuff, internal, external, through consultant, without consultant. Those are technicalities, and it varies. But you see, that's a difference, and it's a much more difficult message, because then it means that all those leaders will be challenged on something that is a little bit uncomfortable for them. But again, just think electricity, 19th century. You've been running a factory floor without electricity, and now we tell you that you have light bulbs and you can operate during the night. It changed. Having light bulbs in your factory floor changed everything, because now you can operate 24 hours a day. Will you do it? Yes, no. It's tons of questions. But you need to figure out the answer by yourself. You don't need to be an electricity specialist. You can bring people in, but you cannot escape the fact that this technology is transforming what you're going to do in ways that are so deep that you can't realistically just outsource the problem to another division and call it a day.
Well, Joannes, I'll give you a choice. We can stop talking now, or you can answer a question from someone I know is a long-time fan of yours. So I figured. Yeah, let's go for it. So Joshua, you owe me one. Thank you. So Joannes, from your experience running supply chains as a service, if most clients still have ERPs, spreadsheets, and policies that quietly make the day-to-day calls, how much does Lokad really shift the focus of decision making? And what does it take for the analytical layer to become the decision maker rather than just another advisor? You can read that. It's a long question. If you
Yeah.
want.
So Lokad, I mean, we stand very firm on our commitment to deliver decisions, unattended decision, which is not autonomous. It's unattended. It runs. We have a numerical recipe that generate decision unattended, and as long as we need to tweak the numbers, we will tweak. We will keep iterating on the numerical recipe so that we don't have to tweak anything. And then we will do the maintenance so that it can continue running unattended. It takes, I would say, it takes a month of dual run, especially for large companies, so that we can acquire the trust. The trust has to be earned. So that's why you need to have those production-grade decisions day after day. And in a large company, it will take months. The interesting thing, is that as we move on that, everybody start to realize that we have now questions that are so much more interesting. Then we can start asking questions as what is quality of service? Quality. If you tell me quality of service is service level, I completely disagree. It's not service level. It has nothing less. And for example, if Joshua is from DoD, Department of Defense in the US, that would be questions like operational readiness. Can we carry an operation? Yes. And the big question, for a given budget, what is the spectrum of operation that are feasible versus the one that are unfeasible? So you see, it's not about do I have a service level on a given screw. Yes. This is so. Just for example, asking the question of what does that mean, quality of service, which is a very, very difficult question. And it could be, again, whether it is defense, whether it is fashion, whether it is aviation or anything, it is a very difficult question. And my take has been that when Lokad, we roll out this sort of approach, then suddenly people have time to really think a lot deeper about those difficult questions. And again, that's something, if we want to go back about data science, it's something where crunching the data really brings a lot of element to the discussion, because suddenly with data, we can tackle very difficult questions. Again, that's suddenly is if you play the card right of trying to leverage all the data that you have, there are entire new classes of questions that suddenly can find the answers in the data. What I'm saying is that unlike a data science team, which is trying to get the answers on its own, here it is very operation driven. We want to do this, and we have a bottleneck. Okay, let's look at the data on how we can really analyze this bottleneck and try to have like a better allocation, and then analyze the next bottleneck. But you see, it's something that is, again, the reason why data science as again isolated fail is that it doesn't get this super operational drive that you get when you are within, let's say, supply chain function, where you have to allocate your dollars for parts of aircraft, for example. Usually, this is a very concrete challenge, where if you operate within a division that is doing this allocation, then you have a real problem in your hands to be resolved, and you don't end up with what is happening with data science, which is you end up with a solution looking for a problem. You stay in, I have a problem, and I will iterate on better and better solutions. You see, that's, again, if you isolate data science, what you get is people are going to craft a solution, and then they are going to be looking for, they're going to craft the solution, and then they're going to be looking for a problem that approximately matches the solution. It's the unfortunate effect of corporate data science.
Well, you know what? It's a follow-up from Joshua. I'll give it to you. But that's the last one. You're cut off, everybody. No. So after what you've just described, when that shift happens towards the perspective that you just described, when that shift happens, how much actual policy change is typically required for a client to commit? Is it usually just a small tweak, or does it demand a fundamental rethinking of how supply chain decisions are governed? I can guess how that might go. Yeah,
I mean, it's the later, but you don't have to do it everything in one day. I mean, for example, for Air France Industries, we even have testimonials. Yep. It's a transformation that has been going on for a decade and still ongoing. So, yeah, I mean, if you take a super complex organization and the maintenance of aircraft is jetliners is extremely complex, it's going to take time. That is true. But again, the thing is, and the way we did it with Air France Industries is that yes, it took time, but the transformation is massive. You know, a decade forward, and that's why I say, do you have a team that has an impact that is company wide and that transform pretty much the entire business? I claim as a vendor that that's the sort of effect that we had at Air France Industries. Yes. And it took a decade because, again, we took, people can't digest a big bang, so we took scopes of decisions and we do it one at a time. I think we have now over 20 different scope of decisions over there. And it typically took a couple of months for every scope to be rolled out and be made really production grade.
This is public record, by the way, just for
this
is public record.
It's very revealing. There is case studies.
There's case studies, there's interviews with directors.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I hope that helped. I'm going to have to call. There are no more questions, and we're also a bit out of time. But good to answer all the questions. And thank you, Joannes, very much for your time. And to everyone else, thank you for attending and for all your questions. And as I've said before, I know some people don't feel comfortable. Some people are more comfortable commenting publicly. Some people prefer to send private messages. They come through to me live, and as you see, I will pose them to Joannes in exactly the verbiage that they're presented to me. So if you have questions, DM us or post them in the comments, and as you see, we will stay and answer them. And with that, I will say, have a good evening. We'll see you next week for the next episode, and get back to work.